All right, we're back for part two. Louisville basketball players will jump right back in. We're at the H's. Haj Turner. I remember Haj Turner's name. I do not remember Haj Turner playing. He was around the Reese Gaines era, obviously, with Rick Pitino. So we will put him right there. Don't remember him playing. Hersey Miller. Hersey Miller is the son of Master P, I believe. I am not the biggest fan of hip hop, so I don't know much about Master P other than he was a good basketball player, supposedly. And then his son transferred here from East Tennessee State, something like that, and was the backup of a backup, point guard, was a walk on and all that. That said, I remember him playing, and he played pretty hard. The team sucked, but he at least gave his all. I'll have him as cool enough. Has a cool background. I wouldn't mind him on another team because he had a good attitude about it, whereas some of the others did not. Hogan Orbaugh. I don't know, like Orbaugh, like Harbaugh, I guess, but put him down here. That's a pretty good hook and hold, maybe. So yeah, don't know Hogan. Jacob Redding, same thing. Decent pose there. Don't know. Jalen Withers. Jalen Withers is a little bit tough because he was the Chris Mack era, held over. Kenny Payne got worse over his career, was like pretty good as a freshman, and people were like, oh man, he's kind of developing. He's got a 3-point shot, and he's done whatever. And then he ended up like just checking out and going to North Carolina, surprisingly, and I think sucks there or isn't very good. But I'll say I didn't really care for Jalen Withers. I wouldn't want his attitude on many other teams. James Scott. James Scott is the dude who got his teeth knocked out and wore a Hannibal Lecter mask recently for Louisville. He's pretty solid. Like the difference between he and Frank that I mentioned, he is the one who like knows where to be, knows where to set screens, knows how to do things. Dunks all the time, which we haven't had in a while. So very nice to see somebody who dunks and tries to throw it down. Solid player. I will have him in my cool enough category. He's young too, so he has a chance to grow. He's like a sophomore, so he might get better. Probably struggled a little more against in the early season with some of the better teams that we played. We lost to like several SEC schools, but in going back and watching some of the team now is different than those teams, like because of the injuries and the timing of when they happened. They play differently now. I don't know if that's going to translate because the ACC's been terrible. So maybe the team's just kind of inflated in their performance. Kind of like I think how Jeff Brahms was the first year he was back. It's like, yeah, we were good, but we kind of didn't play anybody. Could be a little bit of that, but they've helped turn around compared to where we were night and day. Jared Swopshire. Jared Swopshire had like some hope or promise that he would be pretty good. I think he and Rakeem Buckles were the two small power forward, small four kind of deal. Hoping one of them really emerges. And Swopshire had some moments, I think, where, it's like, oh, he got like 6 points there for us in a not too long a span, hit some mid-range jumpers or something. Was frail, but, tried to battle and everything. I didn't mind Jared Swopshire. He transferred out after a couple years. I don't know that he was my favorite, though. I might have him in this didn't really care about group. He could be a little higher in it, but down there. Jared West. Jared West was the second tier time I mentioned earlier of like Christian Cunningham coming in and us thinking, oh, we can just get grad point guards every year, these short guys from mid-majors, and maybe they'll be good. Feels like we got like 3 of them that year, and I might be wrong, but it was like Jared West, Quan Four, and Mason Faulkner, and I think Faulkner got hurt early, so that helped to differentiate the roles. But like both were undersized. The other ones, there's Jared down there, and yeah, Quan and Jared. Jared was like the more stable point guard, and he was fine, but I don't know that he was like good. But he was really just I didn't really care about. He had a fine attitude, glad you were here, but didn't really move the needle. Jason Osborne. Jason Osborne is the first Louisville player I remember to feel like he just didn't meet his potential, and was inconsistent. Like, could do something amazing and then throws the ball off of player's head or something the next play. I don't remember like a ton of individual moments or things in games, but it was like, okay, I need you to be better. Like, if we're going to be great, I need you to be better. And he just never got there. I didn't hate him for any reason or anything. I thought he was fine. I'll have him as cool enough. Like, I rooted for Jason Osborne. I just wanted him to be better. Like, if he was a little bit better, he might have been a barely not awesome. And if he'd done more, he'd have been an awesome. But he just didn't utilize his talent. Jay Henderson, I don't remember playing. I do remember the name. He used to have a fro, but I don't remember him. Jalen Johnson, this is like another iteration of the two power forward deal. Ray Spalding, I believe, was at the same time. Jalen Johnson, I actually liked a decent amount. I kind of wish he'd have played more sometimes. I felt that way. Felt like he had a decent shot, played pretty hard, wasn't the most athletic or tall or anything, but was pretty decent. I'll have him in the cool enough category. Jerry Smith. So Jerry Smith is interesting because it felt like he digressed a little bit as his career went on. And I don't know if it was injuries. I don't know if it was issues with staying in shape, those types of things. But he had some huge moments for us. Marquette game, him running down the floor and taking that girl out, hitting that huge shot. But I love the passion Jerry played with. Was great. Like, even in the Kyle Kurek game, the Syracuse game where we closed out Freedom Hall, like, Jerry Smith got hurt in that game, but he was playing decently well, and he hurt his thumb or something, and I think that opened up more minutes for Kyle. But Jerry was still contributing, but he probably had some like down games and down shooting days and things where he wasn't super consistent. But I really like Jerry Smith, and it's crazy because after his career was over here, like, he ended up playing overseas or whatever and got to a point where he got a shot at the NBA. He played for the Nets for like a week, 2 weeks. And I would never have thought Jerry Smith would have been in the NBA at any point. But Jerry will be in my barely not awesome category as well. Little inconsistent for me. Jimmy King was in the 93 team. He was a walk-on. This is a sports card from 93. They all had sports cards. Pretty cool. Didn't know that. But yeah, I don't remember Jimmy King playing. Whatever this was, he was obviously playing, and he saved the ball or did something. So he's been on the floor. JJ Traynor, speaking of Jason Osborne, I think this is his son. JJ was a local product and very quiet, tall, lanky. We need him to develop over time, could shoot, could get in the lane and rebound, but had a very passive type attitude, quiet attitude. And, a lot of people are like, oh, maybe he'll stay and, grow under the new coach. And then he ended up transferring. He went to like DePaul, and he hasn't done anything. I mean, I think it's just his demeanor, and, he kind of doesn't have any assertiveness, and that cost him. But I didn't mind him. I would just say as a player, I didn't really care about. People here might be like, oh, I love JJ because he's a Louisville guy. I just didn't care. Joe Griffin. I don't remember Joe. Don't know Joe. I'll get him down here. Jonathan Huffman. Seems like Jonathan Huffman was here for 2 years because it was like freshman year. Oh, he's part of maybe he was in that class with Terrence Williams and those guys. That was the other one. Totally could be wrong about that. But it's like freshman year. Oh, lanky, can't physically play yet. And then second year is like, okay, let's see if we can stick him in and be good. And I just don't think he panned out and transferred or had to transfer, as most of those folks from that class did, or some of them did. Jonathan Huffman, I'll just put in that didn't really care about. It didn't bother me. I don't think there was anything about him where I was like, oh, this guy sucks. But he just was somebody I didn't care about too much. Jordan Nwora, a little tricky with Jordan because was here, 2 years and went to the NBA. Made the Bucks, I think, and then maybe Raptors or something for a bit. So he was in the NBA, and he actually had a few big scoring games. Um, but I remember him being recruited here because he wasn't like a super high recruit and he kind of was fat. Like, if you looked at his high school clips, you're like, dude, you're chunky and a 3-point shooter. What is this? But to his credit, he slimmed down. He got good. He became a very good player for Louisville. I think, had the COVID season got cut short, maybe when he was here, and we were going to be good, pretty good in the tournament, and mostly because of him. So, or a good reason of him. But yeah, Jordan was a very good player here. I went back and looked at some of his highlights and stuff, and like he was. Some people might be like, oh, well, he wasn't here that long, or we didn't do anything in the tournament. But no, I mean, you got to remember Louisville sucked like for a good period of time compared to our standard, and he was somebody who was like trying to push in the right direction. So I'll give him credit for that. Jordan Bond. Jordan Bond, I vaguely remember, but I don't remember him playing. Joseph Nsima. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I remember Joseph back in the Denny Crum days. Solid block here on this IU guy, I think. Is that IU or is that a red-white game? Might be a red-white game. But yeah, the was it the same year as Muhammad Lashagay? Around there? Because I remember them both being there about the same time, two guys from Africa. But anyway, I don't remember Joseph playing much at all. And I don't think I remember him playing enough to count him. I'm trying to remember him getting in a game where I was like, oh yeah. I kind of do. I think I kind of do. Like, I kind of remember him getting spot minutes. I remember him being 55. I wouldn't have remembered that if it was just sitting on the bench. So, yeah. Josh Chichester. Josh was a football player, and I don't remember if he was considered a wide receiver or a tight end. Probably tight end. But tall, the tall receiver, tall tight end kind of dude. Picked up and played basketball, maybe because of depth issues for us. If so, thank you for the sacrifice. Want to say he scored a few points at the UK game, which this is of. Is that Derek Jasper? But yeah, I think he did his job. I'll have Josh as cool enough. Josh Nickelberry. Josh Nickelberry was a shooter for a Chris Mack team that never really shot that well, ended up transferring. He was one I just didn't really care about. Like, he ended up moving, fine, but he just didn't do much. Joshua Tench, speaking of football, I didn't have a good Joshua Tench basketball picture, so I had to go with the football keg of nails. Maybe the Charlie Strong era. I can't remember when Tench was here. But yeah, the Joshua Tench fan club headed by Matt Hooch Brenner, and back when we used to go to games. And yeah, Tench was fun. Like, even when he got into games, and it wasn't often, like, he was physical, played like a football player, and I like that. So I have him in that cool enough section. He might have been early. He might have been like a Petrino guy, but I can't remember when Tench was there exactly. All right, Juan Palacios. Tejo was a freshman on the 2005 team. Maybe sophomore. Freshman, I think, though. And Tejo was a really good player. I liked the way he played. He was a decent shooter. Shot was a little flat, but he was physical. He complimented guys well. He didn't, like, demand the ball. I think he got raked in the eye against Kentucky, maybe, and don't know if he was ever the same. Had maybe an injury or two as well, but I had to wear the goggles, which you see here. But I liked Juan Palacios a lot. I wish he would have had maybe more success later in his career here. But I'll have Tejo in my barely not awesome category. Javon Hadley. Javon Hadley's on the team this year. Undersized power forward type guy, 6'6"-ish, looks like. Can shoot the three a bit, but man, he'll play inside. Like, I haven't seen a guy his size really try to post guys up recently, and he does. Now, I'm sure that's difficult when you have guys with bigger size, but honestly, everybody plays so weak these days. Like, you can take advantage of it if you do it. And he did, and he does. Now, again, it remains to be seen with competition. Sometimes it could just be like Louisville goes and flames out in the tournament, but lose by 30 in the first round, and some of the perspectives might change a bit. But like, he's doing a good job. He dropped like 30 in a game not all that long ago that I watched some highlights in, and he looked really good. Strong defensive player, plays the right way. So I'll have him in the Barely Not Awesome with these guys, this group, these couple of guys on that team, because they are doing it the right way. Caleb Glenn was a Louisville guy, here for a year. I think like Curtis Williams freshman year. People like hoping he'd stay around because he's local and all this. I think he transferred to like Florida Atlantic or something. But he was never like that impactful, kind of undersized. It's like, oh, be like Dwayne Sutton type guy. And I don't think he lived up to it, but it's hard to tell with the Kenny Payne era. But he was just a guy I didn't really care about. Kamari Lands. I vaguely remember Kamari Lands, and I'm trying to remember, was he a Chris Mack guy or a Kenny Payne guy, or both? But I think he was a Kenny Payne guy. Maybe not. It might have been Chris Mack's last year, and that's why I'm just not remembering specifically. But he wasn't here long. I think he was, somewhat decent, but just not like super engaged or whatever either way. So Kamari Lands was one I just don't think I really cared about. I don't remember him being like a pain in the ass or anything either, but just don't remember much. Kaysen Pryor. Kaysen's a tough one. He didn't play a lot. So he played up until they were playing in like the Bahamas, and they rolled Indiana, beat West Virginia, and then one of the losses they took was because he got hurt. They lost to Oklahoma, but it was because he went out. And so Kaysen he's kind of like a quirky player, and I think he'd really struggle to fit in on this team right now because the team is much more structured and disciplined than I think might allow for his style of game, whereas he's more of what they tried to be early in the year, which was up and down, play 10 guys, run the whole time, which I think if he does get healthy and come back, that might work for him. But yeah, he was a fun player to watch. I remember seeing him at South Florida a little bit last year. And I'd have Kaysen is cool enough now. He needs to kind of do more to, be up in the list. And he's out for the year with ACL. Keith Otto, name sounds familiar, but I didn't see you play. And it could be from stuff after he played too, like coaching somewhere or something. I recognize that name. Kendall Dartez. Kendall was a JUCO transfer, if I recall, and might have been there through 2004, something like that. Tall, lanky, long arms, block shots, that kind of guy. Maybe he had a few, 15-foot jumpers. I don't remember Kendall a ton, but I do feel like he was a serviceable player, so I'll have him as cool enough. I didn't not like him. I'm like, oh yeah, he'll have flashes. So that's fine. Kevin Smiley. Kevin fits in the group that I mentioned up here, Cameron Murray, Damian Dantzler stuff. I just do not remember Kevin Smiley playing. I remember the name, Kevin Smiley, but I don't remember him. Kevin Ware. Most people remember Kevin Ware for breaking his leg gruesomely against Duke, spurring Louisville into the title run, giving us a story to, make it all the way. But at the time, Kevin Ware was playing really good basketball. And I know when we first got him, it's like, okay, he's athletic, but he's probably not the best shooter, and can he, be engaged on defense and things. And man, he was a dog. He had long arms. He'd get down in a stance to play defense, and I really liked the way Kevin Ware played. And unfortunately, that injury derailed his career. He tried to come back to Louisville, and honestly, it was difficult from a psychological standpoint, I think, for him, maybe more than even the physical stuff. And so he ended up transferring to Georgia Southern or something, and hopefully did a little better down there. I hated to see him leave because, he felt like, a big part of the team, but totally understandable. But Kevin Ware was a really good player. I'll have him in the barely not awesome category just for the stuff that he really ended up doing here and was a big part of the championship team. This is Kanai Ruths, not Connie Ruths. Kanai is the only freshman, I think, on this Tiers team. And I started to watch and expected to see what I would typically see in a Louisville freshman, which is not very good, is how it feels, or not ready, just, which I know a lot of freshmen are, but, when you see like UK down the road, usually they were. But Kanai is mature beyond his years. Like when you watch him play, he'll make mistakes, he'll miss some assignments or do something, but man, he plays physical and plays hard, like for his frame, and he's not weak, but he'll try to dunk on dudes and he'll go into the post and he'll shoot threes, play hard on defense and rebound. So yeah, a lot to like about him. Hopefully he grows and becomes one of their better players. I'll have him in the barely not awesome category too. There's a lot to like on this team if you actually watch them. I was cynical, because they lost to a lot of teams that early in the season they got their butt kicked and played those teams. But even I went back and watched them play a couple of those games, and they were fairly competitive in them. And then they've beaten the crap out of some of the other teams. They've really only had like one bad half where they let their foot off the gas lately. But they haven't played anybody, so hopefully that will change. As they get to the tournament, these guys will have been seasoned enough where they could play. But there's a lot to like about how they play. Certainly. All right, Quan 4. Mentioned him a little bit earlier. He was more of the dynamic, try to get downhill to the basket type guy, but I just don't really care about Quan 4. Don't remember him much. I mean, I think he played hard and everything, so I don't mean that I don't like him. It's just he isn't super memorable in that regard. Corin Johnson, some bonus points because he has the same first name technically as my nephew, though it's spelled different. But Corin Johnson, nicknamed Scorin' Corin, comes from Washington. He has not played much. He played a few games and then got hurt and is out this year. But I went back and watched some of his tape from like Washington and some earlier stuff, and the dude can score. I'll have him in the cool enough category to start. So hopefully he comes back and is a good player. You never know with NIL, all these guys can be gone next year. But yeah, I like that. Karan Davis, a very critical key player within the Kenny Payne era, from recruitment all the way through him not playing. Very exciting storyline. It was the only time I really loved to listen to the radio so I could hear stupid stories about it. So Karan Davis was a D3 player out in California that literally no one was recruiting, that we offered and gave a scholarship to. Second year of Kenny Payne. You know how Louisville fans are. We try to find highlights and justify, this guy's great. Well, he got here, and then you think like, okay, it's just another one of those like stupid wasted scholarship. This guy's going to suck. If he gives us anything, it's great. So anyway, I don't remember him ever playing a minute, but the best part was he got dismissed from the team. It was kind of like lied about, where they said he was dismissed, and then he said like, no, I don't think so. And then he was, and then he ends up showing up behind the bench at games and is just there, which is awesome. Like when you have a crappy team, you need stuff like that to be able to laugh about it. So kudos to Karan Davis for that. That being said, I don't remember him playing. He never suited up. All right, Kyle Couric, King Kyle. The Syracuse game was the coming out party for Kyle Couric. He also had other big plays. Dude could dunk. Hit a lot of threes, Kyle's corner. Now, I wasn't super shocked when he did that. I know some people were. They're like, where the hell did this come from? I'm not saying I predicted it and saw it or anything, but I saw him play in high school. So I said I was from Jasper in the last video. He went to Evansville Memorial, which is like typically a kind of rival school. We play him a lot in sports. And I just happened to be home one weekend visiting my family, and they were coming to play up in Jasper. And I was like, oh, he's a potential recruit for Louisville. Like, I've seen them saying they're going to try to recruit this guy. Walter McCarty maybe was the one recruiting at the time because he was from Evansville, Harrison. But anyway, I was like, well, we've got tickets. Like, we can always get like sit right under the basket, really. So we got them, and I went, and I had my Louisville hat on. And man, he was athletic and could shoot and dominant. Now the competition wasn't all that great. Our high school team wasn't that great at the time, but you saw a lot more athleticism and stuff. And I had seen these guys up close, right? Like I played with some of these guys and stuff in college. I've been around, like watching them play up close. And guys comparable, and you're like, that guy can play with them, I think. Like, and so sure enough, he got there and improved himself. So kudos for the coaching staff, taking him on, and then him growing into what he did and becoming a legend in his own right. Final Four team, he was on the Final Four team right before the championship year. But yeah, King Kyle was in my awesome category. I think we'll start in there, and some of it's just because I kind of knew of him before. Lamar Fresh Kimball, another one of those like Chris Mack point guard transfers, I think. I don't remember Fresh Kimball much other than his name was Fresh, and I just didn't really care about him. All those guys kind of felt the same to me. Like, you're going to come in, somewhat manage the game, but you're undersized. I don't know how well you can shoot, those kind of things. So that's kind of where Fresh is for me. Lance Thomas, later in the game, kind of the promising power forward, please work out, athletic, can jump out the gym kind of guy. Didn't really make it. I don't think. Don't remember him playing a ton, but I remember playing a little bit. But he was a guy I just didn't really like care about. He transferred out, and it was just like, okay, that's not going to kill us or anything. Larry O'Bannon. Apologies, Larry. Cut off the Larry, cut off the head. So Larry O'Bannon is one of the first guys I remember like being a freshman at Louisville, and I don't remember him being very good. He kind of came in. I was like, what? This guy shoots a lot of mid-range jumpers, doesn't make a ton. He might end up being okay. Fortunately, I was wrong, and he ended up being one of the critical people and going to the Final Four. O'Bannon to the basket, the famous call within the West Virginia game. But the dude, the three-headed monster of he and Taekwon and Francisco shooting threes was awesome. But Larry could also, get to mid-range, get to the basket. The team played like weird hybrid defenses and things because of their short rotation, but he did his job there. And then he's a good dude. Like Larry, post everything. You see him out on the ACC network and stuff, and he seems like a really cool guy. So Larry O'Bannon is one of my all-time favorites. Lee Steiden, remember you? Don't remember you playing. Logan Boffman, I think this name got cut off too. I remember him because he was like a student manager at some point as well. But Logan, I don't remember playing either. We have Lorenzo Wade, the 100% best miss dunker I've seen in college. If somebody could show me somebody better, I'd be shocked. Lorenzo Wade used to go up like he was going to demolish the rim and the building, and then brick the dunk most of the time. If he hit one, it was like a miracle. It's like if you imagine a guy that shoots 3-pointers, that shoots like 15% from three, and he hits one, you're like, oh my gosh, he did it. That's what Lorenzo Wade felt like. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like him. I appreciated the effort. I appreciated him trying to do it. I just think he kind of didn't make it. Like he was at Louisville during the Final Four team as a freshman. I want to say he transferred to like New Mexico later. I don't know how good he ended up being, but he needed to get a better jump shot, and that wasn't really his skill set at the time. And then I think we probably recruited over him a little bit. So anyway, Lorenzo Wade, I'll have his cool enough. I appreciated his effort and everything. I clap for him. It's just like he was young and didn't quite make it. All right, we have two Lukes. Luke Hancock. Luke Hancock, famous for the 4 threes, certainly in the finals, the Michigan game. But man, he saved us in the Wichita State game as well and played great in a lot of big spots. Was back the next year where we lost to Kentucky. That team should have won that game. But anyway, Luke Hancock started out rough here. He transferred in from George Mason. I want to say he had shoulder surgery or something like that. Just did not have his shot or his confidence early on. And, people were like, oh God, because we'd already been through the whole, like, how many good shooters is Rick Pitino going to say we have before one actually makes a three? And Luke Hancock certainly kind of fit that bill for a while. And then he started to get his rhythm. And then he started to get his confidence and played more physical and just gelled so well with the other guys on the synergy between the different parts of that team are what made it special. And so Luke is one of the all-time favorites. Also was one of my favorite fan experiences in that series of 4 because we're getting rolled in that Michigan game. So I'm sitting next to my family. My mom is next to me. Right in front of us, there are 3 drunk Michigan college-age kids. Right behind us, there are more drunk Michigan college-age kids. And as they're doing crap and doing it, one of them turns around, high fives, over my mom. My mom gets competitive and pissed off. And so she's sitting there under her breath, mad because we're losing and we can't say anything back. Well then, and we're right on the second row of the top deck, not the top deck or whatever the next deck of the Georgia Dome was. And once Luke hit those 4 threes, I thought she was just going to push one of them over the edge. And she just was starting almost scream in their ear about us coming back. So it was super awesome. And then, Peyton and Montrez sealed it off. But Luke was great. Luke's a great ambassador too. Played against Luke in league games. I'm by no means qualified to be doing so, but he's cool enough to come, just play pickup ball and things. So fun stuff. I think he's retired now, but that was a few years ago. Luke Whitehead. Now, Luke Whitehead was, I don't remember if he was just a Pitino guy or if he was with Denny as well for a year. He might have been. He had a tattoo that said Whitehead's World, and I want to say he had a rap album that I had called Whitehead's World. Back in college, back when we had CDs, which was super cool. But Luke Whitehead, one of the things I remember about Luke was falling on his head and thinking he was going to die. Or at least I did once I saw him fall. He ended up being okay. But Luke was a solid rebounder, would hit mid-range shots, loved, the way he played and his demeanor. He wasn't the most skilled guy ever, but I liked how hard he played and everything. So I'll have him in my barely not awesome category. All right. Mac Wilkinson. Mac, I'm sorry, I could not find again a good picture of you in your UofL uniform. So it is of you with whatever company you work for. It looks like you're very successful, which is wonderful. But I don't really remember Mac playing a lot. I vaguely remember him getting on the court a bit, but I don't think I can qualify it to say I'm going to rank him. So appreciate the effort, Mac, but didn't make the dent. Malik Williams, tough one here. Malik Williams early on, I think, was with Rick Pitino. Tall, stretched 5, would rebound, would block shots, shoot threes. Ended up staying when Chris Mack was here. Really was a catalyst for a lot of the stuff to go downhill toward the end, from what I recall. Comments in the media, attitude during the games, stuff where you're just dude, I get it, but just you're making everything worse. I did not mind him as a player. I kind of didn't mind his game, but he wasn't super consistent. But just the attitude stuff and everything makes him a player I really didn't care for. It's just get out of here if you're gonna, be that. All right, Mango Mathiang. Mango was not very skilled. Mango played hard, was very tall. In fact, I remember running into him at an airport, at the Louisville airport at one point, where I just looked up and was like, holy crap, that guy's super tall. And I've been around a lot of tall guys, where you're just oh, that guy's, 6'9". And it's yeah, Mango was legit 7 foot. I have no doubt. Now he actually crazily ended up in the NBA for a stint. I think he was with the Hornets. but didn't have much skill. I feel like he hit a big shot against Virginia. Was he the one that hit the shot where we beat him 1 out of like 50 times until this year? So I appreciated Mango. I appreciated how hard he played. He was not like the most critical component to a team or anything, but I'll have him in the cool enough section. Mark Jackson Jr., I think he's the son of Mark Jackson, certainly the son of Mark Jackson Sr., but the one that played in the NBA. I don't remember Mark Jackson playing, but I remember being on the team. Marcus Maven. Marcus Maven played on some not very good teams, or at least later in his years. It was the end of the Denny era. I want to say his last year was Denny's last year. And Marcus, had the accident and everything after the fact, and became paralyzed, but has done great with his life since, and is part of the Louisville community as well. But Marcus Maben, the player, was inconsistent. Didn't always shoot great. Had to try to score a lot. Wasn't like super efficient. But man, I liked Marcus Maben a lot. Like when he played, he would go up to dunk. Again, one of the like dunkers legacies for me in Louisville is like you need to have a good dunker, and he was the one on those teams where I was like, that dude's going to throw it down. And even though like those teams weren't good, it felt like Danny always still like won one big game a year or something. I'm maybe misremembering that, but like I'd remember these guys going off in like one game even when the team wasn't great. But I really did like Marcus a lot as a player, and I thought he was fun, and I kind of wish he was on a better team. And I don't know how much of that is like because of him and his play, or just not having more talent. But I'll have Marcus in the barely not awesome category. Marvin Stone transferred in from Kentucky. Tragically died early in his life from a heart attack, I think, playing in Saudi Arabia, maybe some Middle East country, I believe. But anyway, I remember Marvin Stone. I remember Marvin playing really well against UK and getting retribution there. He wasn't always super consistent. He was probably like the third leading scorer on the team, or second or third. Pretty good post player, was fine. Like I had no problem with Marvin whatsoever. So I'll have him in the cool enough category. Mason Faulkner falls into that, like Chris Mack transfer. These guys, like, he's supposed to be a better scorer. I think he got hurt, which derailed him a little early in the year, and then just never really got his footing as like a rotational player. Matt Cross. Matt Cross was Chris Mack. Left before Kenny Payne got here. Transferred in from Miami, transferred out, went to Massachusetts, I think, then maybe SMU. Matt Cross, I liked the way he played. He wears 33. Larry Bird's his favorite player. He tries to play that way a bit. He plays mean, but pretty smart. I think he'd fit on a lot of teams as a good player. So I liked Matt Cross, for when he was here, and I wish he wouldn't have left. I'd probably have him in the cool enough category. I think he might have only been around a year. Matt Simons, a bit of a victory cigar as well, maybe. I think he's still around here, but tall dude. Don't remember him playing much again in the mid-90s stuff, so I'll say I don't remember him playing instead of bucketing him in a place where I shouldn't. Matt Stockman, I mentioned Anas Mahmoud early on. This was the other 7-footer. I will remember being at the bus stop downtown, watching he and his girlfriend at the time come out of Chipotle. And she was a cheerleader, and he's like 7 feet tall, and she was probably like 5 foot, if that, which was pretty cool. But anyway, I want to say he's from Sweden, definitely a Scandinavian country, and slow. Problem was, can he get quick enough to play? Like, feet are slow. He didn't make it here. I think he transferred to Minnesota or somewhere. Might have played okay. But yeah, Matt's was just kind of forgettable here. He wasn't like somebody who I rooted against or anything. I didn't really care when he was in, other than maybe a few minutes where he did one good thing and you're like, oh, thank goodness, we might have it now. All right, Michael Balfour. famous for being Dark Slime. Dark Slime is his nickname. That was a cool nickname, all nickname team for us. But I do not remember him playing. Mike James. Mike James was Kenny Payne guy, and Mike James was the guy on the Kenny Payne teams that I probably rooted for the most. Played hard. I could fit him in on some other teams where it's like, yes, he is a dog. He plays hard. He, maybe not the best shooter, but he's a willing passer, shooter, team player. Tries to rebound and do all the things you want to do. Had to be frustrated as hell playing for a coach who was lazy and dumb. So Mike James I liked. We'll have in the cool enough category. All right. We have Mike Mara, greatest shooter of all time, again, by Rick Pitino. Had one great game I remember at Syracuse where he had several threes to help win the game up at the Carrier Dome. So have to give kudos for that. Seemed like a fine dude, just never really became what we thought we needed. But I'd have him in the cool enough category. I wanted him to do well and I'd get hot, so I appreciated that. Montrezl Harrell. Montrezl started with the big dunk. We thought in the championship game, but I think he kind of torched Syracuse earlier on in the Big East game, title game. But then had a good career. Vicious dunker, vicious tear down the rim dunker. So appreciate that about him. I don't know if he takes the reins from Alvin Sims, but dude was a monster. Always appreciated his effort. Just relentless. Maybe not the best interior defender, maybe not the best passer, but certainly was a dog you want on the team, and I thought he was awesome. Mohamed Lasagay, I mentioned him earlier. Hopefully I get his last name right. This is one of those bullcrap NCAA things where I remember we were getting him. Now, who knows if he would have actually helped or been good, because this was just when we were bad under Denny Crum. He got prevented from being in school for some loan he took at some point that I think he even paid back, whatever. Dude even went to grad school or something here. I don't remember, but it was another ridiculously stupid thing the NCAA does. And, thankfully they're about to dissolve in the next few years, I think. But at the time they were just idiotic. But Muhammad didn't play much, if at all. So if he did, it was probably 10 games in that season. Nate Daniels, good shooter that we are bringing in from JUCO, I think. He's another one where I remember his shot, and it felt like his shot was very flat, that he did not shoot a high percentage, that he didn't have much else. He was get to the corner, shoot a three, not going to be able to play much defense, not a great dribbler or anything else. So Nate Daniels was just one I didn't really care about too much. I wanted him to do better. He just wasn't very good. Nate Johnson. Nate Johnson, again, on some of the not very good Denny Crum teams toward the end of his tenure. Nate Johnson felt like he was the alpha player, right? Supposed to score a lot, but was inefficient. Couldn't shoot great, but would shoot decent amount of threes, mid-range and all that, and not be super efficient. But I liked Nate Johnson. I mean, he would go off maybe every few games, I felt like. And I enjoyed him, but I'll have him in my cool enough category to start. Noah Locke was a three-point shooter for, was it Chris Mack? I want to say he was a Chris Mack guy, but transferred in from Florida and just did not really pan out. I think he just didn't shoot as well as we would have thought and wasn't really that effective, but he was a player I just didn't really care about. Noah Waterman. So Noah Waterman is one who gets a lot of flack on this team, from what I can tell. He's 7 foot from BYU. And I had to go back and watch some of his BYU, a couple of highlights too, because he broke his thumb this year on his shooting hand, and I've had a broken thumb, and it sucks. It really does. And it's not from a oh, I can't do anything perspective. It's just an annoying injury where anytime the ball hits your hand, like you catch it or pass it, like pushing with your thumb, if you think about like pushing a ball, it hurts. Now mine was just like a hairline like spiral fracture around my thumb. His is where he had to legit have pins put in to like hold it in place. So he's playing through it. If he was in the NBA, they'd have sat for 60 games. So I give the guy credit for like trying to push through it. I'm sure it affects his shot. He seems to play hard. I have no problem with him. I like his attitude. He'll rebound. He'll play defense. I can't fault how he plays for sure. So I'd have him in the cool enough. Noah Diakite. Vaguely remember Noah playing. Remember him not being very effective. And he's one of those guys who's like, if he does something good, you're like, yes, he did it. Like, can he do it again? But I don't really remember him too much. So I'll have him in the don't really care about as well. Otis George. Otis was key player. I think he was hurt though for a time where he was in a boot, and that was a problem. But laid maybe the best screen in Louisville history of laying out. Was it Nate Robinson or whoever he laid out on Washington in that game, Sweet 16 game, I think. But yeah, Otis George, full of energy, always had a smile on his face, played hard. Just not the most skilled guy in the world, but I really liked Otis from an effort and energy standpoint. Would like to have him on pretty well any team. So I'll have him in the barely not awesome category. Patrick Antonelli plays now. I've actually seen Patrick Antonelli play, but it was because his mom is a broadcaster, and she was at the game one of the games that he got in. So he just, dribbles the ball around and does stuff. I don't know if I've seen him play enough to be like, oh my gosh, he's, playing. But I just remember that moment where they're like, oh yeah, he got in. And I think he came from Charleston with him, but I'd say I don't remember him playing enough to count for anything. Perrin Johnson. Perrin Johnson was a walk-on with like Brad Giannini and Chris Current. Part of, spot minutes for a not very deep team. You have to give credit for that. Like, he might not have been the most skilled or greatest player, but I'll have him in the cool enough category. Perrin Johnson, I've had some run-ins with as well because he'll officiate some league games, and he's usually a pretty good official. There's been a couple times where I've had to tell him to pay attention, but other than that, Perrin's pretty good dude. I know he gets some flack too because sometimes he'd work with like KSR or whatever, which I don't give a crap about. But he's a nice guy. All right, Peyton Siva from Seattle, short point guard. Peyton's a little interesting for me because he, came in and it was like so wild and like just trying to do everything athletically. Got that kind of honed to where he was like very good at running an offense, very good at defense with Russ, and running and everything was great. He just could not get his shot to work. It like got worse over time. And when I go back and look at it, I just felt like he was too mechanical with it. I wonder if somebody would have coached him not to be so like, oh, just get it here, do this, push. Because it's like every time he's just like forcing it. And you really saw that come to bear in like Syracuse games because you have to shoot threes against that zone. And he'd be wide open, and they were shots like, give me that shot. That's nothing. But it felt always a little hard, like it would hit the back of the rim hard, or it would hit the front of the rim hard. And some of that just has to do with like how you're doing it. So I wish like a different kind of shooting coach would have maybe helped him out, moved the ball to the side or something for him. But Peyton was awesome. Like, he was a super all-time favorite. Loved him, loved his dad, being part of the title run and everything. The thing I wish he would have got was a shot, because I think he might have had a shot at the NBA. He made it, was on the Magic, but didn't make it very long because that athleticism and stuff at his size was just not enough to keep him there. So anyway, got us a championship though. So that the NCAA took away, which nobody even acknowledges anymore. But Preston Knowles. So Preston Knowles unfortunately went out with the Morehead State game. that, gives a little bit of that sting in his legacy. And he got hurt in that game. If he didn't get hurt, we probably win that game, though it, again, should not have even needed to be close if we're Louisville and they're Morehead State. But Preston Knowles played hard, and he played above his recruiting ranking. Like, he wasn't anybody that we're like, oh, thank goodness we got Preston Knowles. But once he got in, he hit some big shots. He was clutch. He had some games where, like, he just got hot from three. I liked Preston Knowles a lot. I would have him on most teams, like 100% throw him in there. I'll have him in my barely not awesome category. Prelo Davis, most people probably don't remember him. I vaguely do, because he was in the Cardinal newspaper when I picked it up my freshman year of impactful transfers coming to Louisville. I don't know that he ever played. And if he did, it was very little. So I don't remember Prelo playing. Q, Quentin Snyder. So Q was a Louisville guy, not very athletic, quiet, smart point guard. Without my Louisville guy lens, Quentin was fine. Like, he played big in some big moments. He's a guy who cared about the program. I appreciate that. I'll have him in the barely not awesome category. I don't know that he did enough to be something spectacular. He's another guy who I've seen playing like league games and stuff. But yeah, he's fine. I don't know that he got to like an awesome level for us. Quinn Zielinski. Quinn was a Pitino guy because he left and went to Iona, I think, with Pitino, maybe. Or he was a MAC guy and ended up going to Pitino. One of the two. But Quinn was around those times where it was like weird. And I liked the way he played. He was a little like quirky, a little awkward. But I kind of wish he'd have hung around. Like, he's a guy you could, have as a glue guy or something around, could shoot a little bit, play physical. Reminded me a little bit of the Matt Cross mold that I think I had up here somewhere. Right around here. So kind of those guys, similar. Different personalities, but similar type. Rock. Rakeem Buckles, power forward, small forward-ish. Jared Swapshire, same time. Rock is the one that I thought was going to emerge. He got hurt, though. Like, he seemed to be injured quite a bit. I like the way he played pretty physical, could hit the mid-range jumper a decent amount. I rooted for him. I wanted him to do well. I don't know if I can put him much higher, though, so I'll have him in the cool enough category to start. Rashad Brooks. I don't remember Rashad Brooks playing that much. I remember him, but it's like, it feels like 2 minutes of time, that I remember him playing when there were, needs a backup point guard or something in the mid to late 90s, but just can't remember much more than that. And maybe him hitting a shot. Like, that's really my only memories. All right, Ray Spalding. So Ray Spalding is, he got drafted by the Suns. He's one who got a little bit better over time. He was a power forward center type. Jalen Johnson was the other one around that time that I recall. Ray felt like a player who, maybe was he another Louisville guy, I think, but he maybe felt like he had more potential than he really did. It's like, oh, poor man's Anthony Davis. Maybe what I heard or something. It's like, come on. But Ray Spalding was pretty good, and I rooted for Ray. I'll have him in my cool enough category. He might move up as I think about him more, but yeah, I just remember him being like pretty good, and you always just kind of wanted more. Reese Gaines. Reese was interesting because Reese, his senior year was when we lost. Like, that was probably the loss in the tournament that I most wished didn't happen. And I think that was the year we lost to Butler. It was either Butler or Xavier, but I think that was the year we lost to Butler. But that just felt wrong for that team because it was like Francisco and Taekwon were young and Reese was there. But Reese had just so many awesome games in college. Like, people that are outside of the know in terms of Louisville basketball and like that might know Dwayne Wade well and be like, oh, Dwayne Wade was an all, whatever in the NBA. It's like Reese Gaines held his own against Dwayne Wade in college, like 100%. Those games back and forth were always awesome with Marquette. And if somebody asked me like, oh, if Louisville could only play one team and you could just watch those games, what would it have been? Marquette, not UK, not Cincinnati, Memphis, whatever. Marquette. It always felt like our games with Marquette were fun and awesome. Or if we kicked their ass, that it was really rewarding, right? Or if we lost, it was embarrassing. But that game always mattered because it was a conference game. We might play them twice in the year. There were a lot of cool factors to it. They had an a-hole of a coach and Tom Crean. So yeah, those days were fun, and Reese was awesome. Reese is one of my all-time favorites. Wish he'd have been able to make it in the NBA. Probably not thick enough. He was like a really thin 6'6", like in his waist area, so couldn't really get pushed around a bit. And then more or less was a scorer and not a passer, so it can be tough when you're doing that. Reggie Delk came in, Tony Delk's nephew maybe, transferred in. A little bit of a 3-point shooter, was fine. Reggie Delk was fine. I thought he was cool enough. He's probably on the lower end of it, but I didn't mind when he played and kind of rooted for him. Rain Smith. Rain Smith is the Australian shooter on this team. Came from Charleston, which a lot of times when those guys move up from smaller schools, can't get their shot off anymore, or it's rushed to the point that they start shooting like crap. He's not a bad shooter. Now, he shoots a lot. He shoots a lot of volume in a game. But the one thing I do like about this Louisville team, because I did not think this going in, if I would have just not paid attention, I'd been like, oh my gosh, they shoot a lot of walk up threes and jack up threes. They don't. They work for their shots. They pass the ball to get good shots. So Rain often, he'll get a lot out of like out of bounds plays and stuff. They drop some pretty good plays. And he's a good shooter. He's probably the best shooter since Taekwon Dean that I've seen here. And I know he just like passed one of his records. But yeah, he's legit, like 100% legit good shooter. Unlike most of them that Rick Pitino would have said is a good shooter. And I think Pat Kelsey said he is, one of the best shooters he's ever seen. So totally makes sense. And I love the way he plays. I try to play a little bit like it. The other thing about Rain, if you watch, is he's not like just a negative defender or a negative rebounder. He busts his ass to do as well as he can on the defensive end and rebounding and passing. I mean, all the other things, like some of the shooters, they just, let me just play phantom defense, run to the other end and try to get a shot up. So, kudos again to the culture a bit. I hope it translates to something in the tournament. I could just as well be wrong and they get smoked, but they're coming around to looking pretty good. Robbie Wine, know the name. Don't remember him playing. He was one of the walk-ons with Jimmy King back in Doug Calhoun and those guys back in the '93 season. So have his autograph. Actually, I did run into Robbie Wine at one point because I was at the Chris Mack press conference when he got hired, and Robbie Wine was like standing next to me talking to one of my guys that I was there with. So just having to run into him. I was like, hey, he looks familiar. Roosevelt Wheeler. So Roosevelt Wheeler was a tall center that just felt like he didn't get too much opportunity under Chris Mack, and then transferred out. And I want to say he might have been here with Pitino too, like his freshman year. I can't remember. But I didn't mind Roosevelt. I wish he would have got more of a chance. I kind of rooted for him. I'll have him as cool enough to start. He might go into the don't care about, but I wanted him to do well. I kind of liked his mentality around the rim sometimes, a little more aggressive than what we'd seen. Russ Dickulus, 2-star recruit, New York, totally overlooked, but he was tiny. I mean, he was tiny, and he just did not fit with Rick Pitino at all. It made no sense that he was here. He had like no discipline, did not follow a system, wanted to just chuck shots. It made no sense. But anyway, Russ Smith was here and somehow stayed. And I know he was close to transferring, but it worked out. Now, a difficult thing with Russ, because I have a little bit of this in my head, is there's a little bit of a stigma from the loss to like UK and missed free throws. And I remember even, I think he missed a free throw at the end of like the national title game. You saw like his head drop of, now that could have just been nothing, but it was like, he's upset that when he doesn't score and he wants to get his points and things. And he didn't, it was too small too, but he didn't really make it in the NBA. That said, if you go back and watch Russ Smith play, like his real highlights and stuff, the dude was just an automatic, scoring machine. Was so fun to watch. Played hard on defense. Really fit in with the team. He's maybe not the most clutch player of all the guys, but man, he'd carry you through the first 30 points you needed, right, or something like that. So Russ Smith is one of my all-time favorites as well. Has his jersey retired here as an All-American, which is awesome. So yeah, Russ really, and he gave us a lot of national exposure too with his personality and stuff. So appreciate that. Ryan McMahon was the spot, clutch shooter for Rick Pitino, one of the best shooters of all time. That might have met more of that criteria. He was a little bit of kind of like a Rain Smith, but I think Rain Smith's a better player for sure. So Ryan was a little smaller, but he had a lot of range. He'd play hard for sure. Dick Vitale always touted him and helped recruit him, I know. But yeah, he was a fun player. Now, I actually played against Ryan McMahon. I'm sure he wouldn't remember it, but I played against him in like a league game. And it's funny how even watching him play in real life helped scout how to play him. Now, they don't play as like their hardest, I know, but just to know like where he likes to have the ball to shoot and be able to put your hand like kind of where it is and know how far out, you need to start guarding him and things. But oftentimes you would see it like in college games when teams didn't prepare for him, like he would just step back another step or so to get his shot off, and had the ability to adjust his range farther and farther out, which was a pretty good skill set to have. So Ryan McMahon was kind of in my cool enough. Even as a shooter and stuff, he wasn't like, my favorite of all time, because it was like defense and things needed a little help. But yeah, he was a good player. Sam Bearden, I don't know Sam Bearden. He looks like he has a beard going a bit, which is good, but don't know. Samaki Walker. Samaki was a big-time player, mid-90s, with DeJuan Weed on the team, I think, that went to the Elite Eight. Triple-double. I remember him getting a triple-double. But the dude was a beast. I mean, just, again, a little like, okay, if that's maybe what you hope Derek character would turn into somewhat, just give me the ball in the post and let me go to work, or let me get a little 15-foot jump shot all day and just bully these guys. You see him going against Tim Duncan there, which I think we got screwed by that in that game. But anyway, Samaki, I'll have in my... I'll start in my awesome category so I don't get too much going on up there. Samardo Samuels was the number one recruit, probably the best recruit we've ever had. From Jamaica. And wasn't like the most athletic guy, kind of the burlier, muscle around the basket, Samaki, Derek character type. And always felt like he just never met his potential. Just you wanted him to be more, and he couldn't get like just dominating numbers. He might have it. I don't know if felt like some of it was his attitude, and it's not like it was a bad attitude. It was just too passive. And then to be fair, at times I think like his point guard was Edgar Sosa, and so you're not maybe getting the ball where you want it and things. So anyway, Samardo, I'll have him like cool enough. He was like never my favorite. And I appreciate him coming here. I appreciate, him playing. The good news for Samardo is he actually got to the NBA and played in the NBA a little bit. I remember playing for the Cavs, and I was like, where the hell was that? When you were in college, you're more aggressive and doing some stuff. So anyway, yeah. Samuel Williamson was a Chris Mack guy, highly recruited. again, I feel like some of these guys are a product of a lack of confidence. They have like a personality quirk that's like, oh, if I mess up, and maybe the coach instills it in them, but it's like if I don't, hit my first shot or I don't do whatever, I start to play tentative or I don't do whatever. And he always felt like he played passive offensively too much. Now, I think he would still give his effort, to rebound and do other things, but I don't think he really did much else. I've rooted for Sam. I wanted him to be better. I'll have him in the cool enough category because he did try. He took pride in what he was doing. He wasn't like out there like, oh, I'm too good for this. But yeah, he just never got the confidence. I think he transferred to TCU maybe. Shaquan Aaron was a great shooter from Rick Pitino, Seattle guy, I think. Thin as a rail. Attitude problem. Uh, didn't play defense, so didn't get to play much. Now we used to get frustrated because we're like, "Oh, play this guy! Why isn't he playing?" And then they transfer somewhere else and they don't do anything anyway. So what do we know? But I didn't really care for Shaquan Aaron. Simon Nadenoff, Simon Denny Crum, then Rick Pitino for a year, something like that. I remember Simon playing a little bit, but I didn't really focus on him. I thought it was cool just because he was kind of a fun player, but I don't know that I really cared about him all that much. He might be a little higher up in that category. Kind of want him to hit a couple threes or something, and maybe it'll trigger in my brain the one or two times that he hit something I remember. All right, we've got Sky Clark. Sky Clark was last year's best player, kind of. Very inconsistent. Was supposed to be a good scorer. Was recruited by like UK, which is why he knew Kenny Payne, and then went to Illinois, and then I think he transferred to UCLA. But to his credit, like in the ACC tournament, I remember seeing this at the gym. I was watching the game. They were playing NC State, and NC State ended up making the Final Four. NC State had to win every game of the NCAA or the ACC tournament to make the NCAA tournament, and then win every game to get to the Final Four, obviously. But they almost lost to Louisville because Sky Clark hit like 6 threes or something. Now they ended up overcoming it, and Kenny Payne lost as he always does. But yeah, Sky Clark was not my favorite. I didn't really like his attitude. Just kind of played lazy sometimes. They all did. Yeah, I just didn't really care for him. And some of that's just probably the stigma of the team. But like, I wouldn't have wanted him to be around for this team. Spencer Legg, walk on. I've heard the name because he's on this year's team, and I saw that he got in a game. So don't remember him playing, but there he is. Steve Van Treese, another guy I've seen in the league playing. It's like, why are you here? You're too big. But anyway, Steven Van Treese was like a backup on the championship team. Came from Indianapolis. Just the lunch pail guy, comes in, does his job, plays hard. I think we probably hoped maybe, and I could be wrong, but like on that championship team, you probably hoped a freshman Zach Price might have been more of a factor to come in and give some offense and do some stuff, and he just didn't. But Steven Van Treese like came in and just was a wrecking crew, got some key offensive rebounds. You totally trusted him when he came in. I did, and it's like, so that's a really good skill to have. I'll have him in my cool enough category to start, but I do like Steven Van Treese. Stephen Enoch. Stephen Enoch was a skilled big man for Chris Mack on one of the better teams that I recall us having. He was strong in the post, great post moves, pretty good defender. Not much else to say about him. I mean, he was like a good center you would want on your team. I'll have him in the cool enough category as well. Stuart Miller, one of the greatest shooters of all time, per Rick Pitino. Don't remember Stu hitting more than 1 3 in any time that I watched, but I gave up kind of on him, and I think he transferred to like nowhere state after that, so I'll just have him in the didn't really care about category. Sidney Curry, I referenced him earlier. That's one of the players people are like, oh, we need Big Sid to come back and be good. He's the one. He's the kind of guy you have to have the right coach for. I think. Now I don't know how he did after he left Louisville, but at least with Chris Mack, he was a dude showing promise. He had some of the stuff you would see in some of the other post guys I mentioned, the Samakis, the Derek characters, Samardo. It's like some of those guys that had more skill in there. He showed some of it and was a bully. Then he got into like Kenny Payne was just lazy and fell apart. So he wasn't anything. But I liked Sidney Curry before that. I mean, I'll have him as cool enough because I feel like if he would have, he may not have survived. But if he was like playing for Rick Pitino, I don't think he would have been in that position. Taquan Dean. Taekwon, I think is probably the better pronunciation. Taekwon is, I mentioned him a lot already. Great 3-point shooter, great player. Of all the players in like an injury that I felt the worst about, it might have been his senior year. And it was not something like a knee injury where you just, I'm going to redshirt or whatever. It was like a groin injury that he just never got right from. And so he's like struggling through trying to get through that year. And he couldn't do what he was before. And he had to carry more of the load with Francisco gone. In an ideal world, you have Francisco come back for a senior year and do it again. But he had family stuff he had to take care of and everything. So I get that. And plus, if you're going to make the NBA, just do it. But yeah, so Taekwon was awesome in the Final Four run. I felt like it was going in every time. And even liked, the way he played defense and everything, but he's in my super all-time favorites. Okay, we're doing all right on time. I'm going to go ahead and get through everything, and then we'll rank on the last one. So Terrence Farley, T-Far, was in the 2004-2005 Final Four team. He was a freshman, I think. He's the Louisville guy. Project, please let him become something because he's tall. He had his moments at times where it's like, okay, he, blocked a shot or did something. But honestly, he is just one I didn't really care about that much. It's like if he's in, we're probably in trouble. Now I've seen him around. I mean, he's still around Louisville, I think. And, seems like a fine guy. But, yeah, I just didn't see it very much. Okay, we got a few Terrences. So we have Terrence Edwards. So Terrence Edwards is on this year's team. I remember Terrence Edwards from last year. He played on JMU and played against Wisconsin in the tournament and Duke. Kind of carried those teams. Was a really big scorer. And I would have thought a couple things coming into this year's team when I started to watch them. I was like, okay, he's going to be the one who seems like the outlier that doesn't fit in the system, that doesn't play hard defense, that tries to get a bunch of shots. He probably has a couple games where he scored like 30 and then, nothing else. So interestingly enough, this is where you can see guys change because he bought in to a system to the point where he's even played point guard at times. I know Chucky was injured one game, but he still has some of the flair, right? It's like how you would try to take Russ Smith and rein him in a little bit. Play like Russ, but just don't do the stupid thing throw the ball out of bounds like he did in the championship game or Wichita or whatever. But yeah, so Terrence probably has a few of those types of moments where it's like, why do we take that shot? But you kind of need that guy that's willing to go to the basket and get his shots and get a bucket when everybody else is scared because the system isn't working, right? Something's wrong. So he seems like he's matured quite a bit into that, and he's been a hell of a good defender. The times I watched him, damn, this dude's locking down. That mentality changed 100%. The games that I watched, because I've watched them together a little bit, clips of them, if you watch them earlier in the season, and let's just say last year, 2024, part of the season, they are not the same team now than they were. And the hard part is the competition has dropped off a lot. So I don't know if it's just that, but even the style of play changed, the defense and things like that, they really locked in. Now, I think the catalyst was not Kentucky. I think it was this Eastern Kentucky game where they won on a last second shot and should have lost, honestly, which is just a garbage performance out of nowhere. That was probably the thing that triggered them to say, hey, this is bullshit. We need to play harder. So kudos to him. He's been great. I'll have him in the barely not awesome category, like with Chucky, because those two guys together have played great. If they do something in the tournament somehow, as always, could lose first round and embarrass themselves and be pulled down. But man, if they make any run, there's some likable guys on this team. There really are, that have bought into to being a part of the program, which is good. Terrence Jennings, freshman, came in with Samardo Samuels. Samardo much more heralded. Samardo needs to be the starter. Could they play together? Could Terrence be the 5 and Samardo be the 4? Spacing was different back then. You didn't need 10 shooters on the field on the floor. Terrence was much more athletic and springy, blocked shots, probably was a little more inconsistent with his effort at times. But I like Terrence Jennings. I like Terrence Jennings a pretty good bit. I'll have him in the cool enough to start. But yeah, I enjoyed it when he played well. I've rooted for him a good bit. Terrence Williams, T-Will. Tough case study here. Terrence Williams, as a freshman, comes in from Seattle, probably followed, the Peyton Siva pipeline type deal. And so whoever we knew up there, that from Terrence Williams got us to Peyton Siva. So thanks for that. But Terrence Williams was like, I remember him coming from Seattle being like, how the hell do we get a player from way out there? My first exposure to Terrence Williams was I was in the Student Activity Center and getting ready to go up an escalator, and I was just like looking down. I don't know if I was looking at my feet or whatever, just trying to not fall. But anyway, I look up, and the guy in front of me is probably like five steps up, tall dude wearing a white sports jacket, and on the back was an airbrushed thing of himself, and it's like T-Will or something like that. I was like, this guy seems like he's pretty full of himself. And I think he was quite a bit. And his freshman year, we often called him a bricklayer, as I remember him shooting bricks off the backboard, off the side of the backboard and stuff. But the dude was super athletic, could dunk like no other, would rebound. And when he played hard, he played well. And it was fun to watch and enjoyable. Later in his career, he became fairly darn dominant at times. He was never a great three-point shooter. But he could get to the basket, make some good passes and things like that. His career kind of ended on a dud because it felt like he just gave up with that team, and that team was good. And it feels like they could have done more. And then after that, he made the NBA, had a triple-double in the NBA, was like decent in the NBA. Now, our nickname for him, like freshman year and stuff, because he would just be so full of himself and all that, was Ass Clown, was what we called him. Now, I will say, I think that's kind of come to fruition later in his life. He had some kind of scandal with cheating out money of, NBA or whatever. So he ended up being a bit of a dumbass. It's hard because he did provide a lot of highlights, a lot of fun. Those years were fun, but he was also frustrating. And if you had to ask me today, I'd say I wouldn't really want him around. So, a little tricky. Terry Rozier. Scary Terry came in, I want to say Cleveland-ish area. Pretty highly touted. Had a good mid-range game. Aggressive, could get to the basket, could shoot some threes, was fun to watch, played hard defense back when we, had pressing teams and stuff. And I liked Terry a lot when he played here for the first couple of years, and I think he went pro. I don't remember how long he was here. But I like Terry. I'll have him in the barely not awesome category. He's carved out a good NBA career for himself. Now is in a bit of hot water about some gambling thing, which shocked that's not happening everywhere all the time, but whatever. Tick Rogers. Tick Rogers I remember more for the name than his play, but if I recall Tick, I remember him as being, 1, more of a defender, 2, being left-handed. That could be wrong. But also that he was a point guard, like a tall point guard, 6'5", something like that. And more of an offense instigator than a scorer so much. But I liked Tick. I thought Tick was cool enough. love the name. If it was later, I would have had like the Tick shirt, like the show or the cartoon. But yeah, Tick is great. Tim Henderson, Wichita. So Tim Henderson was like a nobody. He might come into some games, here and there, and he did. He was a contributor at times for Louisville, but man, he had two of the biggest shots in Louisville history. Uh, and I mean, I remember exactly when and what it was because in that Wichita State game, sitting in the crowd, and it felt like a 20-10 game, and it wasn't. It was later in the game, but that's how much scoring it felt like. And I'm sitting there in the stands. I'm like, this just sucks to no end. Like this team was so fun and so good, and for it to end like this is just bullcrap. Like losing to some small ass school like Wichita State. Now that being said, Wichita State had a lot more talent than we probably realized at the time. When Fred Van Vliet's your backup point guard, and the dude's had like a 10-year, 15-year, NBA career, and the other guys were very good on that team. Anthony Early was really good. Cotton was really good. Ron Baker. They had a lot of talent. So for Louisville to win that game was actually pretty impressive. And they were great next year and got screwed on their draw. But I remember standing up after we were down like 12, just being like, this is over. I'm done. I just walked out. I went to the bathroom. I didn't think I had to go to the bathroom. And I was like, just washing my hands, turning the mirror, like, what the hell just happened? And then so I walk out, I go back in, I sit down, and like 2 plays later, he hits the first one. And you're like, oh, okay, we're kind of what? And then he hits the second one. And you're like, oh, okay. And then Luke kind of took over. But Tim Henderson had 2 huge shots. I'll have him in the cool enough. I can't say like I'll put him over some other guys just because of those 2, but he might move up just for being that and a good team player, all that. Tony Hicks, I don't remember Tony Hicks playing much either. I remember Tony Hicks, but I can't place him and when he played to really move him up. Seems like a dog defender kind of guy, but I just don't remember. Tony Williams, I do remember. I think he's left-handed again. Maybe I'm just misassociating everybody as being left-handed. 3-point shooter, more specialist with Marcus Maben, Nate Johnson team. Had some games where he lit it up a little bit. But I also remember some games where it's like, oh, you're supposed to be a shooter. Why are we missing so much? But Tony Williams was fine. I enjoyed Tony Williams playing. I'd have him in my cool enough category. Trey White was a transfer in from USC. He was a good freshman at USC, mid-range jump shooter kind of deal. Came over for Kenny Payne. Was decent at times for that team, but just didn't play super hard. Didn't play defense. Not much else to say other than I didn't really care for him being here. So, yeah, he goes in that category with those guys. Trent Gilbert, I do not remember Trent Gilbert, excuse me, obviously. Trey Lewis is part of that Damian Lee team that I mentioned that got hosed. And Trey Lewis was a good player. He was a good point guard. Trusted him a lot. Would like him on a lot of teams. I'd have him in my barely not awesome category with some of those guys. All right, Troy Jackson, Escalade, I think was his nickname. Troy Jackson was a bit hefty, but skilled. Did he play for the Harlem Globetrotters or something like that? But he's played pro ball, or did for quite some time. And just, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. He's big. How do you block that out? How do you get around a block out? I don't know. But Troy Jackson, I don't remember too much from a playing standpoint. So I won't necessarily put him over some of these guys yet, but he's in the cool enough, certainly, category. Tyler Johnson was here in the last year of Kenny Payne. He transferred out, went to Wake Forest. Probably another one of those. It's not comping him like saying they're the same good player, but Russ Smith of like little hectic, little aggressive, always active, antsy, doing stuff. I think he's trying to become a point guard kind of deal, that stuff. I liked him all right. Now, I don't think he would have fit on this team, and I think he's the one who, like, Pat Kelsey had to yell at because he was on his phone when Pat Kelsey first got here and was like, who are you people? And he's just on his phone. So probably not a cultural fit. But yeah, I thought Tyler was actually okay. I kind of, rooted for him and wanted him to play more and do well. It's like, just let that guy play. Let him go try to get his 20 points instead of some of these other dudes down here. Tyler Sharp, recognize him. Don't remember him playing. VJ King. VJ King was a 5-star, super talented player that we needed to help pick us up and take us to another level, with a certain team, and just didn't meet that expectation. I think, again, confidence. These guys just, when you can tell they don't have that inherent, like, I'm going to get mine, I'm going to go be great, tends to not work out. And he was one where it did not work out. I rooted for him. I wanted him to do good, but honestly, I just, like, at some point didn't really care about him. It's like, guy, you're just not going to be anything, so just step aside. A little bit of a similar but different story here with Wayne Blackshear. So Wayne Blackshear was a 5-star, like, high recruit. I think he was like the player of the year in Chicago over Anthony Davis. And Wayne, it's kind of crazy because I forget he was young on the championship team. Which was interesting because, like, Luke was a transfer in, Wayne was younger, but they both played a similar spot, and so, like, who starts and who comes off the bench was kind of a question for a while. But Wayne had never really met his potential. You got excited when you started to see it, but man, when he was, like, at his best, like in his highlights, he's like windmill dunking on guys, windmill dunking and jumping over guys and shooting threes, and you're like, where's that? I think he had a massive shoulder surgery before he got here that totally changed it. And I've heard that from, like, physical therapists and other people. Like, sometimes if you get a shoulder surgery, you just never get it back. You don't get your range of motion. Like, you can't pull a ball back. You can't, do things. Now, I don't know if that's the case with him or if it was like a confidence factor, but he got too tentative. It's like, dude, you can't be tentative. You have to be mean. And I would have hoped he could have been mean, but he just didn't get to being mean. I always liked Wayne, had a soft spot in my heart for Wayne. I'll have Wayne. I'll start him. I still give him credit. He was on that championship team. I want to put him on Barely Not Awesome. I kept trying to talk myself out of it, and people be like, oh, come on, Wayne didn't do it. I'm like, yeah, I like Wayne. Will Scott, specialty 3-point shooter off the bench for, I think he was a walk-on. Maybe transferred in from Ivy League or something. Will Scott was a decent shooter. I do remember him playing. I didn't really care about him. Like, if he was in, it's like, yeah, okay, Will Scott. Wyatt, I don't know how to pronounce that. Battale? Don't know. But I don't know him, so I'm going to have him down with these guys. Zach Price and Zan Payne. So, okay, Zach Price was the backup center, back up to the backup center on the championship team. Louisville guy that people were like, oh, a little bit of a development project, not like a Terrence Farley. He's got more skill. He's left-handed. You saw him make a few post moves, go to his left and stuff, and you hope for it, but he's a little slow-footed and stuff. But he also had a bit of an attitude problem to me, and he was one I didn't really care for. I didn't like Zach Price being around on the team too much, so moved him down, even though he was on the championship team. Zan Payne, son of Kenny Payne. Try not to fault him too much for that, and it's not a knock on, Kenny as a father, but Zan was not a great player. He came from UK. I do remember him playing a little bit. He had a 3 here and there, but the fact that he was, here, I won't say I didn't really care for. I'll just say I didn't really care about Zan Payne. So that gets us through all the players, and I think pretty close to where they need to be. I think we're okay on the breakout. Again, I won't necessarily go through these guys, but I'll go through and rank these guys, and then in the next video, and we'll be finished.